Welcome to the end of eras. Ice has melted back to life. Done my time and served my sentence. Dress me up and watch me die. If it feels good, tastes good, it must be mine. Dynasty decapitated. You just might see a ghost tonight. And if you don't know now, you know. I'm taking back the crown. I'm all dressed up and naked. I see what's running naked. Oh, yeah, the crown.
All right, and we are here and with another hell of a show ready to go. Give me just a moment, make sure everything is correct on my end. And I apologize ahead of time, but the hats got washed because they hadn't been washed in a little while, and I figured to go ahead and throw them all in the laundry at the same time. The problem with that is I have no hats, so you're going to have to deal with the glare coming off of this dome today. So just have to bear with that a little bit. Put some sunglasses on if you have to, whatever you need to, but bear with me on this. That being said, let me make sure everything is in place here. We're going to have a great time today. I've got a great guest ready to go back in the backstage area. We're going to talk some comics, of course. We're going to talk about quite a few other things that are on there. And you never know what's going to come up on these shows, as we like to have a lot of fun. But we always keep it to the 4 rules that are on there. No politics, no religion, no drama, no negativity. The faster you can say it, the better it comes out. Or something along those lines. Anyway, that being said, we're going to go ahead and bring him up on here and have a blast. So let's go ahead and welcome Chris Sahloff.
Hey, how are you?
What's going on, Chris?
Oh, not much. Enjoying my day.
There you go. Before we get into the meat and taters of everything that's on here, man, I sound so country whenever I say that. Go ahead and give us your elevator pitch. Let us know who you are, what you do, and where to find you.
All right. I am Christopher Michael. I am the creator, writer, artist, letterer, everything for C.R.I.T. C.R.I.T is based off of a Dungeons and Dragons game that we homebrewed a few years ago. It was so much fun. I decided that I was going to just draw it out for my friends, and that turned into a whole slew of things, from stuffed animals and figures now to energy drinks, and we're going on our 7th published issue, and it launches October 12th. So I'm just really excited to be here and talk some C.R.I.T.
Nice. That sounds like fun. Now, definitely, I'm putting a pin in that energy drink thing. We're going to be talking about that. I've been waiting on this one. Now, before we get going on all this and getting into all of this, I got to ask you, what is your origin story? Like, how did you get into doing comics? How did you get into doing the stories and all, and even the game?
So I grew up on comic books. I've always loved comics, as you can probably tell from my back wall here. I've been reading and collecting since I was a kid. I had So after high school, I signed to Sony Records for a few years, and I got out of everything. I didn't play video games as much. I didn't collect because I was, a starving musician for 6 years. I was homeless for a whole year. Went through quite a bit in a matter of about 6 years, and then about 6-7 years ago, I started collecting again. Got back into comics and started catching up on some of the stuff. And I'll be honest with you, I got lost. I grew up 90s X-Men, X Factor.
Yep.
When it was easy to understand where that story was, and even Batman. I've been a Batman fan since I was 4 years old. My first birthday cake that I can remember was Batman. My first Halloween costume was Batman, and I always enjoyed the character. The idea of this broken, mentally individual running around at night beating up criminals who's ridiculously loaded, and he was a playboy. So, as the nerdy little kid in school who was shy to talk to girls, Bruce Wayne was like the dude. And then I got into Spawn. I met Todd McFarlane. I met those Image guys when Image first launched, one of those first years. And that was really cool to kind of be at that ground level and really experience that story. And I read Spawn. I was pretty much a Spawn and X-Men person for the 90s. I got into Youngblood. A few of the Image Comics Wetworks was up there. And, Gen 13, strictly because of the story. And if you've ever read Gen 13, you probably know as a teenage boy that was like, the best book ever. But yeah, again, I got out of it, and then right before 2020, we started. I had moved. I had started a new job. When I'm losing that job, I was pretty beat up about it. I've been working since I was 12, and my wife came in and said, "Hey, do something that you enjoy." And I thought about it for a little while, and I put a lot of thought into it, and I started playing Spider-Man on PS4 because I hadn't played video games in God knows how long. And while I was playing, I figured out how I wanted to create a D&D game based on superheroes. Because in Spider-Man, my Spider-Man was different than everybody else's Spider-Man, like the way they built the hero. You can kind of go in and you can take the piece out and customize and do all this stuff. And I've been playing D&D for almost 20 years now, and it's very similar if you break it down to its core dynamics. So I called my friends and I said, hey, 10 years ago, we wanted to play superhero D&D. We couldn't figure it out. I kind of just did. And I put together this, I homebrewed the campaign, got everybody in the room. Some of us hadn't played in 10 years, and we just had a blast. You're looking at, mid-30s dudes just enjoying rolling dice and pretending to beat up things. And we had so much fun. We talked about it for about a month. And again, I really didn't have a job at that point. So the job I had previously, I had a tablet with a pen and I could draw. It was like a Samsung tablet. So I downloaded like a couple free drawing programs, and I just started sketching some stuff. And being that I had nothing else like creative in my life at that time, it sparked this thing that I hadn't experienced since I was playing music. And that the first issue was very rough. I do not have a background in art. I don't have a background in comic books. It was just, hey, I want to do this, so I'm gonna give it a shot. And I won't lie, I thought it was the best thing ever created. Looking back at it, it definitely needed some work. But I was very proud of what I had done in 3 months. I put together a 17-page book, and I'm going to preface this that my wife is an absolute phenomenal artist on top of being a very, very talented photographer. And she knows a lot about anatomy, how light works, how angles work. She's brilliant in those areas. And to top it all off, her mother is an art teacher, and she is, like I said, a very talented artist. So I took this 3-month project to her. We were laying in bed about to watch Bones, probably, because that's one of our go-to shows. And I was like, hey, I finished this today. What do you think? Now, my wife's, she can be nerdy. She likes comic book things. She's not as nerdy as me, but she can be there. So I hand it to her, and she reads the whole thing. And without making eye contact, hands me the tablet and goes back to watching TV, turns the TV on, and just says, it's okay. And just goes back to watching TV. And, the creative person inside of me was just crushed. It was almost like you gave your high school sweetheart like a love note, and she just denies you, My wife and I, we were best friends for 11 years prior to even being together. So we had a level of communication and understanding with each other a little bit better than most 4-year marriages. And I was like, well, I guess she doesn't think that I take it seriously. So the next day I went to Best Buy and I bought an iPad. And I said, well, I sat up all night researching like stuff that makes that could make me better. So I signed up for all these comic book classes, and I bought an iPad, and I started drawing again. And I finished a page, and I said, hey, before I go any further, what do you think? And she's like, oh, so you're actually going to do this? This is something you want to do? And I said, well, yeah, actually now, because you made me feel like crap, now I want to show you that you're wrong, and I want to do something good. And I have no ego in anything. And I said, I understand that I'm not the best, but maybe you can help me. And so literally the first 3 books, almost every page, she would erase something, move something, cut something. she would come in sometimes after 3 days of me working on a page, and she would erase things. And she didn't realize sometimes that I wasn't going to get that back after she closed out of it. But she was brutal, and I love her for it dearly, because every time she pushed me to be better, it made the artwork better. And I'll be honest, it took, book one, I was set. Yeah, I'm gonna put out all these books. I'm gonna publish our campaign. In my head, that's what I wanted to do. We're 7 books in, and now I know it's like it's gonna have to happen, because we've put out, this is our 7th issue. I've got people all over the world that have read Crit now, and my guys just absolutely love the fact that our little D&D game has such a unique following, and we get people that want to know about D&D now. So it's all coming full circle, and I know that was very long-winded. I apologize, but it's not like I just decided one day that it wasn't a pipe dream of becoming a publisher. I have a lot of friends who have these characters, like Jason. I think Jason Farrow was on your show once.
Yes.
And he's had this character since he was like 10 years old. So it's a 40-year-old character. My characters are 40 years old because they're based off of my friends. They're literally my friends with superpowers. So yeah, they've been around a long time. But the dream of doing comic books, that existed when I was like 7 or 8, and I drew Wolverine once. I remember the one time I decided I was going to do comic books was I was trying to emulate Jim Lee at around 7 or 8, and I spent an entire day drawing Wolverine. And once I stepped back and I looked at it, and I said, that doesn't look like Jim Lee. I suck. I'm never doing this again. And then 30 years later, I started doing it. So, I was a dungeon master first and comic creator second, and now they kind of go hand in hand, which is really cool.
And there's nothing wrong with that, because you said, comparing it to Jim Lee and then going, well, it sucks I'm not doing this. How many people would have just, stopped and never done comics ever, if they would have gone ahead and gone with that mentality? So sometimes you have to look at it and go, well, maybe my work can be better later on, or I could do something different, with it to change up the look on it. But as far as your origin story, don't think that you're long-winded on this, because I didn't think that, it was like a splinter that you got out of a die from, Dungeons and Dragons type thing that actually, implanted into you. And then all of a sudden you kind of put it in your brain, oh, I'm definitely doing this. That would have been a great origin story right there, too.
I will say, it's like, I've been playing D&D for a long time, and every campaign, there's always the group that says, man, this would be a cool TV show. This would be a cool book. This would be a cool something, right? And I'm just one of the first ones that I know of in my circle that decided just to do it. Which is actually really cool, because I've actually inspired some other guys that I know to start drawing their characters and do different things with their campaigns. But one of the coolest things is the guy that plays Caliber in our book, Brad. He's the one that introduced me to Dungeons and Dragons. And he has a lot of friends back home that still play. And he was showing in the book one day, he's like, yeah, this is what my DM did. And these are his friends from when he was a little kid. And they're like, are you kidding me? Like, that's freaking awesome. You have a DM that did that? And so all of his friends that play D&D just think it's so cool. And everyone, I actually work in the board game tabletop industry. And I talk to people all the time, and I'm like, oh yeah, I have a comic book and it's based off D&D. And they're like, what? And I tell them how I do it. And they're like, oh my God, that's freaking awesome. I want to check this out. And so it's kind of cool, because I've carved out this little niche now, where at first I thought I was at a disadvantage because I don't have that same emotional connection that everybody does. But the longer I do this, the longer I realize, like, I actually do have that emotional connection, because these are my friends. And so when I'm writing, and I do clarify this, I really don't write. I record all of our sessions, and then I storyboard and create the comic book based off of it. So it's like a very unique ecosystem that our book and game live in. And so when I'm doing that and I get to draw the poses, or that's something that my guys have always said is, like, you really know how to pose my character when you're drawing him. Like, because I've known these guys for so long, and I know when Boulder's talking, if he's crossing his arms, if he's smiling, if his shoulders are back. Like, these are my best friends, so I know what they're going to look like when they're doing something, and that's kind of where that connection comes, and where you get to see the emotional side of my artwork is in that.
That is very cool, and I just want to throw out there real quick that everyone needs to understand. This is why you never want to upset anybody who plays D&D, because they can immortalize you in a comic book as a good guy, or they can kill you horrifically somewhere in there over and over and over again if they want to. So always be on their good side.
Yeah, don't cross the DM. Actually, book 1 of Crit is when the guys they had made me mad. Book 1 is really like the 3rd or 4th session that we had, because it kind of took a little bit to get the niche of the game.
Right.
And we had a few different test sessions for the superheroes because we had to balance these classes. And so by the book 1, I was just really tired of balancing things and changing things and customizing things, and I just tried to kill them. And I came really, really, really close. The only thing that really saved them is the fact that I had just finalized their comic designs, and I was like, I really don't want to go through that again.
That is awesome. That falls right into it then. I mean, like I said, don't cross you. That is awesome though. I mean, to have that and to be able to have that camaraderie and friendship and everything that's built up, and had it where it's evolved and keeps going. I mean, I don't even know if there's is there an actual ceiling to this? I mean, do you have anything planned on when it's supposed to end, or is it just going and going?
So we are coming to the end of the campaign. Now we're going to continue the Crit universe, but storytelling wise, we're all very firm believers in letting the story end. That is one thing that I've wanted since day one, is to give these characters a good send-off. The roots of the game are in like Mass Effect, because that was the first D&D game we ever played.
Mm-hmm.
And what I really love about Mass Effect is no matter how many choices you have, you still have a send-off for your character. There's still an ending to the series.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like where in mainstream that puts me off is never having this end. And, I look at the industry a lot. I'm this type of person where if I'm going to do something, I really want to know how everything works. So I do a lot of research on, I'm in sales. I'm not just like a salesperson. I actually work in like marketing department. I'm the head of 2 different departments for sales, and I kind of look at market trends. And manga has, like, even though the comic book industry is doing well, the majority of it comes from manga, and everyone I talk to that reads manga likes it because it's a consolidated story.
Yep.
It's not necessarily the artwork. It's just the storytelling aspects of it. And I've leaned really heavily on that type of storytelling where it's, manga's fun. Even if you have a really dark story, there's some fun elements to it, which you can find here. And that's actually organic, because none of the guys in the comic actually really read comics. They read manga and anime. So every character is pretty much based off of some kind of anime character.
Nice.
I just like comic books. They have superheroes that they've enjoyed throughout the years, but they've never been like into the arcs or things. They'll pick up a book here, like they're familiar. I think every one of us has read X-Men or Spider-Man. You can't really grow up in the 90s and not read one of those books. Actually, Terrell, his lifelong dream was to become Iron Man. He has the suit, he has the mask, so he's big into like those characters, but their inspirations all come from manga. And so I wanted Crit to really fit into that manga like feeling, but have a comic book atmosphere. And so I've settled at 42 books. That gives me room for some of these longer sessions to really let them breathe. It gives us room for a couple side stories that I know we wanted to tell. And it's also, my favorite number because of a very specific movie, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah.
And you can't have a book rooted in sci-fi and not have some kind of reference to Hitchhiker's Guide. So
exactly.
When we were figuring it out, and we're right at 4 years, and we've played over 40 sessions, but some of them are getting smashed together, some of them are continuations of each other. And I was playing the books out one day, and I was like, well, I could do 36, but if I tell this side story and I extend this session and we actually get to really feel some of these battles, I could stretch it to 42, and I could really get the number I want.
Yes, exactly. Now, what are some of the let me ask you this, as far as like some of the pop culture stuff that's going on right now and everything, what are some of the influential superhero-esque shows or movies or something like that you've watched recently that have really kind of opened your eyes going, wow, there's some new content out there?
New stuff. I actually really like the Invincible cartoon. I know the girlfriend was a little bit annoying in comparison to her comic book counterpart. Props to the cartoon, because I had read a few issues of Invincible. Didn't really get into it until I watched it, and I was like, wow, maybe I should revisit this.
Yes.
The Boys is another one, but I can't really use that because they've gone so far off the script of the comic, which is a good thing.
Oh, yes.
Because that comic existed in a time period where it could, and it was very niche, and it did what it did because of what it was.
Right.
I don't think you could correctly tell that on TV unless it was like an HBO Max, like midnight showing of a show, and you'd have like 10 viewers. Sadly, it just really wouldn't. The wider appeal didn't happen until the TV show. They did a really good job translating that.
Right.
And then I really didn't think that I would enjoy the Batman, only because I'm a purist when it comes to Batman.
Right.
And I try every time to go in with an open mind, even if I don't like a casting, if I don't like a story element. There's parts where I just try to go in with an open mind because I'm happy that they're just continuing it. Sometimes I'm like, we need to let him rest for a little bit because we've beat him into the ground so hard, and we've had so many different ones. It's really hard to get behind it. And I said, well, I'm going to go. And I enjoyed the movie. I didn't appreciate the portrayal of Bruce Wayne as much as other people did, even though I understand where they were going with some of it. I still like my Super Jack superheroes. I'm sorry. I like knowing that my superhero definitely could kick my own butt. There's a part in the movie where he's moving a table, and I'm like, I work out all the time. I did bodybuilding for a few years. I'm like, my back looks better than his. That shouldn't be a thing. Bruce Wayne should be bigger than me. He trained with ninjas. I get that they've changed it. I appreciated the movie for what it was. There was some stellar performances in that. It definitely won me over. I'll see the next one. Could have been a little shorter, but it was good. I recently decided I was going to revisit an old favorite, and I've started rereading all of the Spawn series.
Yes.
I've always been a huge fan of Todd McFarlane. People can say whatever they want, but that man has perseverance higher than anyone else I know in the creative industry that's met some of the railroading that he's experienced, and 300 rejection letters. And you want to ask about the energy drink. I mean, really, I'm inspired by the fact that he goes, what do I want for Spawn that I want? Well, I'm going to make it. And when I first started this venture, I had a 12-hour drive to Connecticut, and I put a bunch of interviews on with the Image guys because I'm one of these people where I like to be inspired by like my roots.
Mm-hmm.
I don't go by what other people like what's cool now, because what's cool now is probably inspired by whatever came before it.
Right.
And if you listen to music, you don't get inspired by the band you're listening to. You get inspired by the band that they were inspired by. That way you don't sound like a watered down version of that.
Exactly.
And the interviews with him just were very, very inspiring. Like listening to some of the stuff he had to say about Image when it first started, and just the passion behind that, and knowing that, like I saw a post the other day, he's in the backseat of his car inking pages for Batman and Spawn.
Yes.
I'm like, that's me. Sometimes when we travel, my wife drives so I can draw. Yep. And I appreciate that. And so I was inspired by him, and I wanted to just kind of revisit those old Spawn books that really, really hit home to me when I was a kid. Not that I died in a battlefield and was reborn like that. I didn't hit me in that form, but just to know that story of Spawn, you can read 1 to 100, 200, 300 now, and you're not getting these reboots and new universes. He's expanded it, which is cool. But I appreciate that.
And just whenever you think there's nothing else they could possibly put in there, they keep expanding off of that as well, which is interesting because even with yours, you start off with a fairly good size, for the universe in there, and then it almost explodes, but not in an overbearing manner. So you've got characters in there that have qualities that need to evolve, that will evolve, that you can see in there. So you've actually got character grounding, which you can definitely see where you'd be invested in the characters that you're reading about, and that's really cool. How many different characters are you looking at that you have right now, roundabout?
So we have the 5 core characters. You have Caliber, Boulder, Reach, Spectre, and Bones. Those at the end of chapter 1, that is the core team. And when I was planning these books, I really wanted chapter 1 to focus on the characters. So, going into my research, indie comics tend to, for lack of any other way of saying it, blow their load in the very beginning. And you don't really get to see that development. And I think that comes from a lot of us having these characters in our heads for so long. We just want to kind of like get it out, right? What I really wanted was that first chapter of breathing and getting to see these characters for who they were. So later on, I can grow the story and not the characters will grow with the story. I don't have to. I did the character development. I've laid that groundwork. You know who they are. You know their personalities. Nothing's out of place. Now, here's the world reacting to them, and this is what you're going to see moving forward: is the world reacting to the things that they do and what they do during those reactions. Because that's how D&D is.
Right.
We have 5. I introduce other characters. There's NPCs, as they're called, in D&D. And I get to play a lot of different parts from different godlike beings to, we have a female ADA that comes in book 6 who is a very big player later on. And I don't try to force characters in because I've wanted to keep C.R.I.T since day one grounded on the characters. When you play Dungeons and Dragons, your story, your gameplay has to be about your players or you lose them. And so you're always going to see it from the player's perspective. You're always going to have those characters be at the forefront because they are the main priority in the story. Everything else happens around them and you experience it with them, but you'll always see it from their perspective. We have my Richter, who's been introduced already, was like my player character for a little while. They just never took him on missions. I made this dude who was a total badass, and they never brought him on missions because this falls into the realm of Dungeons and Dragons, where if you play with experienced people, they know the DM will always put somebody there that probably has ulterior motives just in case. So they would never bring him thinking he would kill him. And so I never really got to develop that side of him, and I wound up dropping some of the cool things I wanted for him. Do you know the character Cyber from X-Men?
Yes.
So I love Cyber, and I wanted him to have like robotic arms, kind of like that. And there was a completely different version of Richter that existed for a while. There's a reason he had long sleeves for so long, and we never really did anything with it. And I was like, well, can I just rip his arms off at some point and give him robot arms? And that didn't happen. So, sticking true to my vision, I let it all be organic. And later on, I introduce actual character me. I have to learn how to draw myself. I come in as a character named Seven much later on. He's been referenced in book 5. And my character is I pretty much like I'm a glorified I make stories about the heroes. I play who I am in real life,
Mhm.
but I'm part of an organization that keeps track of all these weird occurrences in the world, kind of like Men in Black.
Gotcha.
And my role in the organization is to, take care of C.R.I.T's needs and make sure they're good, but also keep a record of everything they do, because we're like historians. And I'm a firm believer, I always have been, that if we forget about history, we're gonna repeat the same mistakes over and over again.
Yes.
And so my character is big on making sure that I keep track of all their mistakes. I also have to fix them, and when they fight a giant kaiju, I have to spin that to the news outlets, like, no, that was just special effects, that it really didn't happen. So that's my character that I put in there. And like, as a DM, I've decided the characters that go into the story, I decided this early on, if they didn't serve a purpose to move the story forward, then I wouldn't do it. I had a lot of cool ideas for, I could create this or I could do that, because it's D&D. It's limitless in the amount of things you can create. So every character you do see that gets a name on, or has if it's a named character in the book, eventually they will do something in the story that moves it forward. So just keep an eye, because I drop character hints. I'm big about laying these little Easter eggs early, so that later on you can go, oh, that was there. I love aha moments.
Exactly.
I've had a few people pick up on some of them, and they're like, oh, you did this and then this. And I was like, yeah, it was planned, because in game, I'm 30 stories ahead of where we are right now.
Exactly.
So I can do that. And I think that's one of my favorite things, is when I'm talking to somebody and they're like, oh, I saw this, and then later on it was here.
Right. And whenever you're a DM, that's what you're doing anyway. So you're technically just doing it for the comic, but in a larger scale.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like you said, you get that aha moment while you're flipping through the pages, and it may be an issue or two into it before you go, whoa, I got to go back and recheck this out again and see what I missed. How did that happen?
And I'm blessed to be so far ahead in my story, because there's things that we created later on. So Brad, the guy who's Caliber, is one of my co-writers. Him and Boulder Terrell, we collaborate on the book. And so recently we had a discussion about a character that becomes very prominent later on, because the character was there the whole time. They just never really interacted with it. And later on, they're like, oh, this is a cool character, and now it's a villain. And they were like, well, the character's awesome, and we should have had it put in earlier, but we didn't. So we thought about some places where that character fit narratively, so that way the players, I can fix any jarring moments by the pregame, like, hey, remember this? Well, now it's this. But for a reader, I like to lay that groundwork early, so that way later on it's not as jarring when that person or that thing shows up. I say thing a lot because I have a lot of like monsters and robots in this book. When you have characters like Caliber who are immune to magical abilities, like my answer for that is big giant robots smashing them.
You always have to have an answer for something. It can't just be immunity to everything. It's like, let's try this one.
Yep. And I'm a big sci-fi guy. I'm a huge Ninja Turtle fan. I grew up on Ninja Turtles. I'm probably one of 3 people that enjoyed getting the last batch of movies, even though they were what they were. To me, they were just live action cartoons with a bunch of CGI. I had fun with it. And I love Transformers too. No matter how cheesy it got, I've always been a big fan of Transformers. So if you were to take me as a kid at 6 years old, I would have wanted to create He-Man, Ninja Turtles, Transformers, and G.I. Joe. And that's pretty much everything that's in C.R.I.T.
Oh yeah. I can definitely see where the influence is in there for that. Now, question I have for you is, and this is going more towards the Dungeons and Dragons side of this on this one, you being a DM, I got to know, what is your take on Stranger Things, because of course, for a lot of people who have never even heard of Dungeons and Dragons, I don't know how you do that exactly, but people have come out saying they've never heard about it till this show. How accurate did you see some of the depictions that were in there for that with that show?
Well, for one, if you look on the screen behind me to this side of my shoulder, you'll see a red box back there on my bookcase. That's actually the Stranger Things D&D module. So I have it. We've played it, and I do enjoy Stranger Things. Just like Big Bang Theory, it's really hard to translate a real game of D&D to a TV show and not lose your audience.
Right.
There just is. Just like if I were to put my recordings out of the game, it would lose half of my audience real quick because there's a lot of banter back and forth. As a DM, when we're playing, there are many occasions, especially because our game is homebrewed, where somebody rolls something and then we have to take 15 minutes to figure out if that really happened.
Yes.
Right? But in Stranger Things or any TV depiction, you just see them roll the dice and they're like, and I do this thing.
Right.
And the DM doesn't even, he's like, oh, and this big thing happens because it's TV. It's going to be entertaining.
Yep.
Now, and that goes in even in for Roll, what was it? Not Roll Initiative. What is that? It's a YouTube show. Matt Mercer and the guys from
yes, I know what you're talking about.
Dang it, I can't think of the name right now. I'm sure somebody's watching this and going, it's this thing. But whatever that Matt Mercer's show, the one they have where it's unscripted, but it's a bunch of, very talented actors and voice actors. And I'm sure a lot of that's planned or edited because I've watched them. Mm-hmm. And as a player of like 20 years, I've never played any session that goes as smoothly as some of those. I'll give Matt props to him. He's an amazing DM. So I'm sure he spends a lot of time prepping for those. And I think as a creative team, now that it's so big, they probably spend a lot of time prepping. But your average D&D session does not flow that smoothly. Exactly. There's always the one guy that wants to murder everybody in the room. There's one person playing on their phone that forgets what they're doing. It's never as smooth as that. So
exactly.
But I will say, to the point of Stranger Things and the depictions that we get, what I'm happy about is that more and more people are being exposed to D&D as a non-dungeon dwelling demonic thing and just something that's fun to play.
Yes.
And it's opening up these doorways that never really existed for a lot of us nerds before.
And that was a point that I was going to bring up too, because as far as I'm concerned, I actually didn't grow up with Dungeons and Dragons at all because I was very sheltered. Believe it or not, my family did not believe in all of this at all. I mean, look what I turned into, Demon Phil. I'm really growing up now. But this is what happened.
My parents ran a church. My mother ran a Quaker church. I wasn't exposed to either.
Yeah, so my big thing was a little bit later in life whenever I got into Magic the Gathering, and I can definitely relate because you're talking about how smoothly things run as opposed to what you see in some things. And they like to show you the highlights of just slap a few cards down. Somebody's like, oh, you killed me. Oh, blah, blah. I absolutely love that clip. Everybody thinks it's just a fake meme that's on there of that bigger guy that's sitting in the LCS and flips the table because he is so upset at how much damage is being done to him on the game. And I can relate to that guy. I never got that upset by any means. But whenever you're sitting there and, you've spent $200 on the perfect deck that everybody, recommends, and you sit down, you slap down your first few cards and then you have no more moves because they just lay out on you. It happens. And it does kind of bear down on you a little bit and they don't show those parts. Like you get to see the parts of, for this move, I'll put this move, and this move, I'll put this move. But it doesn't always work that way. And that's kind of tying into what you were saying. It's not always the fluidity that's in there with what's going on. There's some things that have to be explained. And with your series, it seems to have more fluidity to it, where it's actually going through and becoming a page turner because it's like, okay, this is happening. Now we have to take care of it. Instead of just sitting back there going, well, is it actually happening? Did we actually see what we think we saw?
Yeah. Again, with like the modern storytelling, with D&D and having it in different mediums. I think they do it well to get the point across, but it does make it hard when you have new players that show up and they're just like, oh, I roll a dice. And it's like, well, it doesn't really work that way. And I love when I love the fact that everyone knows what, a 20 is. Like, oh, I crit rolled that. And it's like, I love new players when I'm playing with people and they're like, oh, I want to do this. And you have to roll a dex check and they roll like a nat 20. And they're like, I nat 20'd it. I'm like, that's cool. What are your pluses? Oh, you're a 23. Yeah. The rating for that was like a 30. Sorry, you're never going to be able to do that. Why? I got a nat 20. I should be able to do whatever I want. It's not how it works. All right. It's not just because you crit rolled does not mean you get to do everything you want. But it does. They do it on TV. Okay. Well,
Well, I mean, if it's on TV, it's true. We all know that.
I know. Even the news these days, you have to question.
I got to ask because I'm more of the darker side of things. I mean, believe it or not, Demon Phil is the name on here.
Couldn't pick that up at all.
Who are some of your favorite villains?
In my book or in general?
In your book, in general, however you want to go with it.
I'll say in general first. I'll go into some of the characters that I have in my book.
Okay.
Believe it or not, I'm not really a big fan of Joker. They burned me out on Joker.
Right.
Personally. Comic books, movies, everywhere. Joker should have been dead a long time ago. In fact, they actually weren't going to bring him back. He was just a popular character, so they kept doing it. As far as like true villains, I'm back in my Spawn era, and Violator. I mean, dude is, he could be on the level of Joker with his maniacal side, but he loves to play chess with people. I think that's really cool. Going back and seeing some things that I didn't pick up on when I was a kid.
Yep.
How he's manipulating everything from the background to get his way. I really enjoy it. Violator's a really good, very well written villain.
Yep.
And if I'm going to go into like DC and Marvel, see, Marvel's hard now because nobody's a villain anymore. Every book I read, like when I saw Apocalypse was on a team like X Factor, I was like, I just can't. This dude tried to annihilate everyone. Come on. The age of Apocalypse. Like, do you not understand? Like, that doesn't happen. So I'm not going to go into Marvel villains because we can argue about that all day. With DC, I think they have a unique way of doing the rogues gallery around all the characters.
Mm-hmm.
I think Flash is some of the coolest ones. I like how they play with the elements, On the TV show, you get watered down versions, but Captain Cold is still freaking cool. I've always enjoyed him. Even as a kid, I just like the idea that he's like they're just so gangster on that side. Like all his entire rogues gallery is a bunch of gangsters with like cool weapons.
Yep.
I'm looking up at my wall right now of characters. And, I say Spawn, and the character of Chapel, although I know he was on Youngblood and was a good guy, he was always a villain to me. Mm-hmm. You can't really have Chapel on a team. Like, it's not like Punisher. He's worse than Punisher. Right. He was a villain on a hero team, which was very unique. And I have him right here, actually. So the whole reason I got back into that's cool. I'll fix it. This guy right here is probably my favorite character design. Yeah. So if you've collected any Spawn stuff, he's the reason I got back into collecting. I saw that on eBay and I was like, I have to have that.
That's Cygor, isn't it?
Overkill.
Okay, Cygor the. Which one is
Cygor? Is the big giant gorilla, which he's cool too, but I never really got into him as much as this guy. I have all the versions of him. I went online and bought them all one day. Something about a cyborg hitman that's obsessed with killing people so well that he just completely mods himself out until the point where he's a walking zombie controlled by a robot. I think that's just really cool. And I watched the background on them making him, and he was overkill because it was when they were on. It was Todd and not Jim Lee, Todd and the guy that made Deadpool.
Rob Liefeld?
Rob. Yeah, Todd and Rob were on a show with Stan Lee, and they were making a character. They were just said to make a character, and they made Overkill. Well, they wanted to keep him, so they changed it to Overt Kill, and that's how we got him in Image. So I thought that was really cool to see like that background of them making him. It was kind of cool. I like villains personally that have different stories. I don't think every villain needs to be redeemed. I don't think every villain needs to have a crazy backstory. I'm a firm believer that sometimes people are just bad people. Nature versus nurture, you can go into all these different reasons, but sometimes people just aren't good people. Right. No matter how much Netflix wants to make a story about them so you can enjoy them. Or Disney turning every like my wife and I got in an argument about the witch from I forget her name, from Sleeping Beauty. What's her name just played her, and my wife loves the character design. I'm like, you realize that she tried to kill a child because like the whole story. I'm like, you can't just make her, oh, she has this tragic backstory. I'm like, so do a lot of people, and they kill people and they're still bad. But when we go to villains of Crit, I have one who's a redeemable character, and he gets mixed in the wrong. He gets into something for the right reasons, but it's the wrong thing. Mm-hmm. And it's more of a vengeful thing that he's trying to do. So, I decided early on I would have him as like my one redeemable character. If you've read the book, Zaka is pure evil. Actually, he is part of a race of beings like Samedi. They don't really have a physical form of their own. They're Geed. They're made purely of imaginatory energy called ethereal energy. They're raw energy. So they take different forms on our plane. And Zaka can, because he is so evil now, can't actually create his own physical form. He has to inhabit dead bodies. He can't even inhabit living bodies because they don't accept him. So he can only exist within these dead bodies because of just how evil he actually is. And we had toyed around with this story early on, and I had given him all these reasons why he's evil. And eventually it was just, he really just hates Earth, and it's okay for him to hate human beings and all of humanity because he doesn't like this plane of existence and he's stuck here. Mm-hmm. So, because I played with the idea of like, if I were this omnipotent being and I was stuck on Earth for centuries dealing with the stupidity that we have, I'd hate us too. And I'd probably want to annihilate all of humanity. Just because I can relate to him doesn't mean he has to be redeemable by any shape or fashion. Right. And then I have another character in that rogues gallery I introduced in the first chapter, Sanguine. Sanguine's actually based off of my old assistant manager, who was the man weighed probably close to 400 pounds. He told me he had trained with samurais in Japan. He was also a trained sumo wrestler. And if I'm not mistaken, he was trained in the arts of ninja. Okay, not ninjutsu, but he was trained in the arts of ninja. Oh. Every time I talked to him, it was some other thing. Yet he couldn't bend over to pick something up without needing something to help him stand back up. He had a story for everything. And so he actually was the first DM I ever had. And we played this game that he didn't allow us to create our own characters. He gave us characters. We didn't even get to roll dice. We didn't have character sheets. He controlled everything. And the game was so, like, every session was almost like a different pop culture thing. Like, we were in a Resident Evil world one day. We were in Eternia the next. And he gives my character the power of, and you want to talk about villains, this DM was the biggest villain in my life. He made me hate D&D in 20 minutes. We played 4 sessions. By the 4th session, I made him so mad that he closed the book and walked out, and then he quit on me the next day. He quit his job because he hated playing D&D with me. I created a. Am I allowed to cuss on this show?
Oh yeah.
Okay. I made a move called the Mind Fuck. So he gave Brad the power of mind. He gave me the power of body. And he put this big giant demon in front of us that was supposed to annihilate us. And again, we didn't roll. So I played the slow game with him. I said, okay, I can change my body to any shape or form, right? He goes, yeah. I'm like, but am I like Mr. Fantastic to where if I just want to stretch my arm, I can do that? He goes, yeah. I said, and Brad can control people's minds, right? And put them in a trance and do things? Yeah, totally. Okay, cool. So I get with Brad and I'm like, all right, this is what we're going to do. I'm like, you're going to put this big giant bowl monster into a trance. I'm going to get behind him and I'm going to get really, really big. And I'm going to have sex with it. But I'm going to have my penis grow so big that it comes out the front of him. And he goes, okay. So we start. And I slowly tell him what I want to do step by step. And I'm like, all right, cool. So I'm going to get behind him and have him flanked. Okay, cool. And I'm going to get really, really big. Okay, cool. And I'm going to have my arms come up like and grab it by the shoulders. Okay, all right. I said, and then, and I tell him, and as I'm telling him that I'm penetrating this thing, and mind you, he rolled first to see if I was allowed to do whatever I wanted. And I rolled. Right. Well, he rolled a 20 for me. And so, and I was like, and I want to do this. And he closes the book. He tells his wife, he's like, we're leaving. And we never played that game again. And he didn't show up to work. He said, Chris, I'm transferring down to Wilkesboro. I was like, all over D&D? All over D&D? So we made Sanguine based off of him. And that's why he changed his shape in every book, because I really didn't want that guy to ever read the book just by chance and see the likeness. But that was the biggest D&D villain that I ever had, was my own DM that I made quit not only D&D but his job.
Wow, that's some accolades there for the whole game system right there.
Yeah, worst D&D game I ever played, but probably one of the best stories I have from playing D&D.
That is definitely a way to go ahead and leave your footprints on a game plan there.
My favorite villain in comics is still Violator, hands down, though, to date, and it just solidifies it as I'm reading through again and seeing all the cool stuff that he gets to do. And we can never ever forget John Leguizamo's amazing portrayal of him in the actual Spawn movie. I will take that to my grave that I enjoy that movie, and John Leguizamo was just freaking awesome.
The movie, I think it was given way too much potential was the problem. It was marketed way too high, plus coming off of the HBO Max, anime series, the three video or whatever series on there, that was phenomenal. And then they come out with a live action. Everybody's like, yes, we finally get, an actual comic book live action that's going to be great, because we didn't have much at the time. And it didn't do so well. But like you said, John Leguizamo, he ran that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And to the point where, as I recall, I read a thing on there at one point where it said whenever he ate the maggots that were on the pizza in there was actual maggots on the pizza. He wanted it real. He did not want it fake. And I was like, I'm sorry, he went to what level on that? Now, they said he puked his guts out, right after the take. But he wanted that to be as realistic as possible so that it would be that dark and twisted, just like the series would have to be.
Well, I will say I've appreciated him in every role he's had, even in Mario Brothers. And the guy brings it. He is a comic book publisher now. He just created his own comic book. And I think that's really cool. I've always appreciated the man. And that was probably a role that solidified him as like one of my favorite, like I guess underappreciated actors in Hollywood for stuff like that. And now you just raised that even more for me. That's so cool. Oh, although interesting he would do that. That's just another level. But Michael J. White, he was good in that. I think the cast was all very, very good. There's a great cast. The thing that it fell short on was budget.
Yeah.
Because Spawn needs a lot of CGI, because you have the cape, it needs the Venom movie level CGI. I actually really enjoyed Venom. It's a fun movie. I really wish it would be tied to Spider-Man, but I thought it was good. The first one was the second one was pretty good. But that level of CGI I think would be really good for Spawn. And I'm looking forward to what they do with the new one that they've got going right now.
Well, as we are recording this right now, I just want to let you know that let me see, what is it? October the 4th is whenever Todd is going to make his huge announcement, because he did a post today saying October 4th he's got a huge announcement about the Spawn movie and what's going on with that. I did not see this as a big a surprise as some other people saw on there, because he overshadowed the D23 thing whenever the news came out about Spawn Batman in DC that he's working on. And then all of a sudden now this with the movie, if you're seeing a pattern there, there's definitely a pattern, because DC wants to get a little bit of that spotlight from Marvel. And now that Marvel's kind of dimmed that spotlight on their own in some areas, DC's looking to capitalize. And if Spawn has a chance to help capitalize on that, so be it, because this can get very interesting very quickly. I'm interested to see what's going to be happening on that news tomorrow.
The thing that Todd has with his brand that other companies don't, and again, I don't work at Disney, I don't work at DC, I don't know what they do behind closed doors. But Todd's always had the brand of Spawn, and it's never strayed, he's had ups and downs as far as I would say content here and there, because he's had to step away a little bit,
Right.
But the fact that his 300th issue outsold every other book, he was pulling manga numbers on that book, and he still pulls solid numbers on Spawn month in, month out, 300 plus issues in. When you look at titles that both big companies are putting out, sometimes don't even break triple digits.
Right.
So he's doing something right, and he has loyal fans.
Yes.
At the end of the day, they're loyal to Todd. So, when when they announced that he was working on DC, it was like, okay, DC understands their limits and some of the things that they've done. I can appreciate a company saying, hey, we tripped up. Guess what? We're going to try something new and bring something you like.
Exactly.
Not, hey, here's something new. You better like it, or else. It's like, hey, we're going to try and give you something that you enjoy. I'm curious with DC, since we brought that up, about Black Adam. My issue with Black Adam, and it was like a double-edged sword. It's like, I really like the fact that The Rock is Black Adam, but I really hate the fact that The Rock is Black Adam. And the reason I hate it is because when you put The Rock in anything, it becomes The Rock. He's on your production team. He's in every board meeting, and I appreciate about him, because he puts everything into it. But with something like Black Adam, if he doesn't do it right and doesn't do that character justice, it's a waste of the character in the overall universe. Because then my fear is, if you ever put him into a teen movie, or like where he's maybe the villain, we're going to have a movie about a villain where the heroes are the backdrop, and it might not do as well for storytelling purposes just to have The Rock there.
Right.
So I'm hoping that if they take that Black Adam piece and it becomes bigger in their overall universe, I'm really hoping The Rock can kind of rein in, his ego a little bit there, and well-deserved ego. I got to give the man credit. He's a hardworking man, so that ego is very well-deserved. But when you're working on bigger team things, I just don't want another Fast and Furious problem where we have to make a side movie just to make him happy.
Well, yeah, that's a whole different show in and of its own on that.
Well, the Fast and Furious, that's a whole other universe. Yeah.
But rumor has it that Black Adam will be crossing paths with Shazam after the next Shazam movie. So it's going to be Shazam 1 and 2, and then Shazam 3, of course, will be the combining of the two, because they were big opponents in the comics for quite some time. And it's like you say, though, it's how much of the focus is going to be on the character and not The Rock. Yeah. Because if the focus is solely on The Rock, we're going to miss certain key points that are going to be coming out of the story of Shazam and his evolution into that point.
Again, I give him props, though. He's not in a jungle. So,
yeah.
But to that point too that you bring up about them bringing him in on the third movie, that's something that other companies should look at, because they're doing that right. They're developing their villain separate from their hero. And I won't go into any of my thoughts on Marvel, like current Marvel, but where they really fell flat in the majority of the first movies was their villains.
Yes.
Okay, your villains were always, this is an ongoing joke actually with me and the guys in Crit. I was like, hey, look, another Marvel origin story. It's going to be a mirror image of the main character, just a bad copy of him.
Yep.
And I had an argument with them, like, no, that's not how it is. I was like, Ironmonger versus Iron Man.
Yes.
Black Panther was the same thing.
Yes.
Like, the only movie that didn't have that was Guardians of the Galaxy.
Right.
But really, they were their own enemy the entire time. I love that movie.
Yeah.
Probably one of my favorite as far as storytelling wise. I thought it was unique. Thor 1 had the big giant robot. Like, that one was different.
Right.
Just not as well done. But even Captain America, Red Skull, is a failed version of Captain America.
Right.
So, I think that if Marvel wanted to take any notes from anybody, it would be to develop those villains separate.
Well, they have a shot, because they're going to take my favorite villain, Doom, and it's already been announced that he's going to have his own. They haven't announced if it's going to be a series or movie, but his first appearance in the MCU will be shown on Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, which is next month. So to be able to see his appearance, I mean, and it could be a Thanos thing where he just shows up at the very end and is like, okay, Doom foretold this. Doom is going to take care of this, and speaking his own first person thing. Even if it's that, I don't care, but do it right. Do him right.
Yeah.
He has been done wrong so many times before in Fantastic Four. And if you're going to build up to where you're going to put another Fantastic Four out there, it's got to be done the correct way. And like you said, the villain's going to make this one. It's going to make or break. And they're taking one of the best of the best. If it's done right, this could actually breathe brand new life into the whole MCU thing. It's a lot holding on to it.
I said something the other day because people, were complaining about one of the Marvel shows. And where Marvel is with the MCU as a whole is that we all have to realize that not every entry is going to be made for you. I actually have a reunion show with my band this weekend, and the singer and I, we were talking because his kid really enjoyed Ms. Marvel. I didn't get into Ms. Marvel. I like the character of Ms. Marvel, but the overall story of the show just didn't appeal to me from even the write-up they did on it. I was like, okay, cool. That's, it's just really not my type of show.
Right.
So I don't have to watch that one. That's fine. I can not watch that. There's a lot of shows I don't watch. And then She-Hulk, I was like, I wasn't a big fan of Ally McBeal. Why would I, that's cool. You have an Ally McBeal show.
Right.
So, but fans of Ally McBeal would like it. So that's cool. Like, I'm glad that you're tapping into the greater pieces of this universe, because now you can have these different niches. I'll have my own opinion on Moon Knight because I would like that kind of show.
Mm-hmm.
Gripe about Moon Knight was we didn't get enough Moon Knight, When Moon Knight was there, he blacks out. And it's like, man, I want to see that suit. But the overall show wasn't that bad. I think Marvel got dealt an interesting hand when they lost Chadwick and then Iron Man steps down in the same time period, because Black Panther was a very good stepping point. It would be an easy pivot from Iron Man to Black Panther because of the popularity of the character and the actor. Chadwick Boseman, I mean, he really owned the role almost to the point of where, Robert Downey Jr. did with Iron Man. And even, going into Chris Evans as Captain America, who I thought was phenomenal. We're in this weird period where we don't know how these actors fit into their characters and how these characters fit into the universe.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious to see how they fit Doom in there when we've already been told about Kang, Kang the Conqueror.
Right.
who is a, you know, top tier villain as well. So I'm like, are you giving us two genius, like literally, like Kang is intelligence level up here, Doom, like they kind of on par with each other.
Yep.
Unless you read the comic books where Doom like rips his skeleton out, that'd be freaking sick if they post.
Oh
but
yeah.
you know, like you have these very powerful villains. I'm curious. I'm hoping the best. I am one of those people who I do always hope for the best.
Right.
Even when the advertisement for a movie I wanted to see had a guy's butt cheeks right in my face. But
yeah,
I just want to say we really need to stop over sexualizing men in comic book movies.
you only saw it on the advertisement. I saw it in, what was that, 120 inch or whatever it was on the big screen, you know, in the movie theater. No, I still am taking therapy for that.
So when I started creating comic books, I treat it like I did when I was in music. So when I started playing music at an independent level, I always supported those around me. So I only bought albums and listened to bands that were around my level or below, like trying to make a name for themselves, because I know what it's like to be that starving artist. And yeah, I have my favorite bands and stuff, and that's cool. But if I'm going to check something new out, it's always going to be something from my realm. And so even with books and stuff now, like I've given up on mainstream comics. That's why I went back to the old Image books that I grew up on, because that's where my roots were. And I rely on my roots and now indie comics to fill that gap. So when it comes to these big motion pictures and things that 10 years ago I would be, actually, as part of my wife's vows was to go to midnight releases.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm only going to put my money into things that I know 100% that I want to enjoy. And like Spawn, for instance, they put out a Spawn movie. I'm going to go check that out because I'm going to be happy with whatever they throw at me, unless they tried to throw out this idea where he wasn't really going to have Spawn in the movie. And I'm like, cool, so do a Sam and Twitch movie. I'll do that, you know. But I'm speaking more with my wallet now on things that I like than my mouth, if that makes sense. Because time's precious, you know? And when I put my TV on, I'm usually watching, because I actually watch TV when I draw. I know a lot of guys that listen to music. I can't do the music thing because I get caught up in the music and then I want to go play.
Right.
But if I'm watching a TV show I've watched like 100 times, like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, I'll put that on the background because my book's funny. And actually, so I say this because issue 6 reads like an episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia meets the Ninja Turtles. Because the way 6 plays out is these guys are running their own coffee shop now, and that's how they make money. So in D&D, you always gotta have money. You can't just loot, because then you're not heroes, right? You can't just steal everything. So they make a coffee company to go around town, sell coffee, and then they can jump out of the coffee truck and save the day when they need to. So they're like a mobile. They're always mobile and always able to do things. And so in this book, they're sitting there peddling their coffee, and then all of a sudden they got to go fight giant robots. And so it's like literally like when they're inside the van, they're arguing and going on just like they do in Always Sunny. And then all of a sudden these people come screaming and they're like, oh, what's going on? And then there's this giant robot they got to fight, just like Ninja Turtles. So that's my type of storytelling right there, if anybody's interested.
No, that is awesome. And they should be interested, because we're going to go ahead and throw this up here too. And the links are all in all of the feeds that are out there. So if you want to go ahead and go over there and back this and support it in any way you can, go over there, do so. Going to have some great things going on with this. This is, go ahead and give us your elevator pitch for what this campaign is and what all includes.
Yeah. So this is the 7th entry into the series. It is the 6th book. We have a book 0. And where we're at is the beginning of chapter 2. So we've established the heroes, we established their powers and their personalities and kind of their ambitions now. So where we're at, they've separated from their employer Technetic. They've got to figure out a way to make an income aside from their Heroes for Hire deal that they've got going. And they create a coffee company. That's why it's called Caffeinated Chaos, because what happens in D&D all the time? We we sit there and drink 4 of these, and we have a lot of chaos. So, like I said, they're serving coffee and fighting robots, and it's a great. I'm really proud of the first entry in chapter 2 because it really opens up a lot of new things that are going on in the books to come. There's a surprise ending. There's new characters introduced, and we have 2 new animals. If you've read the book before, you know that we have the talking cat up there, Samedi, who is a jerk, just like every cat that I've ever owned. And we have now Pan, who is a chameleon, and we have Archimedes, who's an owl. They have their own power sets and they do their own thing, but each one of them have their own little unique personalities. Archimedes is a very pompous British owl with wizardry powers, and Pan is a very laid back. I actually based his personality off the turtle from Finding Nemo, and he wears a beanie and he's really chill, and he has a lot of bard powers. So if you're familiar with those classes, you kind of get it. And they're here to help out. And what happens when C.R.I.T has to go save the day? Well, the animals are left to serve the coffee, and that's chaos on its own. So check it out. The campaign itself launches October 12th. I've got everything from single issues and digital issues all the way up to energy drinks. And my top tier, because my top tier is usually in the $100 range. Sadly, I can only ship energy drinks in the U.S. because I don't have the permits and licensing to do that elsewhere. I've had a lot of people request some D&D time. So this is the first campaign where you can actually get 5 DM'd sessions. It's a limited slot. It's 5. 5 people can get 5 4-hour sessions with me and some of the guys from C.R.I.T. You'll get a beta testing game book. So you get the first 5 levels of C.R.I.T. And you get your own custom D20 rolling tape, like dice table. So we're going to be doing that in there as well. And I just got a link today for metallic foil covers, like actual metal. I might do 5 of them in the top tier because I kind of want to have a metal book.
Oh yeah.
But I always try to make everything accessible. So if you're new and you want to check it out, for one, you can go to homebrewedcomics.com. I've got issue 0 there for free because I believe in my book. I want you to check it out and not feel like you're risking anything. So go check it out. It's free. Homebrewedcomics.com. If you like it, October 12th, you can get in on every book. They're all going to be on the Kickstarter as well. And for all the new backers of the Kickstarter, when it's all said and done with, if you did get a catch-up tier, I send you all the digital books the day that the campaign ends. So that way, when you get your books in for the next book, you're already caught up and you have that time to check it out.
Nice. Very nice. So you already heard it on here. He's going to have the campaign coming up on the 12th. Get over there, find whatever. There's all kinds of stuff to choose from on there. But remember, there is no judgment if you don't have the money to go ahead and do anything. But it costs absolutely nothing. Use the power of that finger, the correct one if you can. Hit the share button and get this thing shared out so other people have a chance to get a chance on that too. And if you are going to go ahead and back it as well, hit that share button as well. The more shares that are out there, the more eyes are on it, the more people have an opportunity to make that decision to go ahead and jump on board to this world building exercise that he's got going on from a D&D perspective. It's an interesting setup, and then to hear that these paranormal animal things with powers are going to be taking over a coffee shop, that was the selling factor for me. I'm in. This whole show has been nothing except for the animals taking over the coffee shop with paranormal powers. I'm like, oh, come on. Take my money.
So what I learned about my con experiences recently was that I guess I only exist to have these on my table. So book 3, we had talked earlier about the energy drink and everything. My goal is to always do something unique. I like to stand out because in the indie community, in superhero community, you can really blend in with everyone around you and really, lose your identity. So I'm always pushing that envelope just a little bit. Where can I put myself where I stand out? And this was the first one. This was my first idea was the stuffed animal. And I had so many people that got it on the 3rd book that came back on the 4th and 5th book. And they're like, oh, my kid took it. My other kid took that one. So now I need another one. And I actually, one of the coolest moments I had was I was at a con a few months ago. It was before I fulfilled book 4. And I had a guy sitting there talking to me about the cat. And he's like, oh man, I really like this cat. I want to get the cat. I want to get the books that go with the cat. And his mom walks up and he's looking, and she's looking at me and she goes, oh yeah, we backed your book on Kickstarter. I was like, oh wow, I didn't know that clearly because I've never met you. And she was like, yeah, we got the cat. And she was like, well, the cat was for me. And he's like, well, I want a cat too. She's like, well, I guess we're going to buy another cat. And so I gave him a bunch of swag and everything while they were there. And I was like, that's really cool. The fact that, I met some of my backers and they spent a good amount of money on my Kickstarter and they liked the character enough to buy some more. So that was one of my coolest experiences. That, and there was a little girl about half the age of my daughter. My daughter's 12. This girl must have been 6. I had just set the table up, hadn't even put the books out yet. And here comes this little girl making a beeline for the cat. And she grabs the cat and she holds it and she's not letting it go. And the dad's like, well, I guess I got to buy this cat. And I was like, I hadn't even set the table up. He goes, what is the cat? So I start showing the books and she's like, I want the books too. And I was, in the background, even though Crit's based off of our game and we can be a little bit mouthy here and there, I do try to keep it around, TV 14.
Right.
My kid reads it. The guys in the campaign, they want their kids to be able to read it. So we keep it fairly clean. And I was like, I'd ask the dad, I'm like, would you let her watch My Hero Academia or something like that? He's like, yeah, she watches that all the time. I'm like, then you're fine. And so he picks up all the books and she was just so happy. And she came back 2 or 3 times and people were there and she's like, this is my cat. And so, it's cool to get a bunch of 40-year-old men that like your stuff. But I think as a 40-year-old man, it's really cool to see the kids from when I was that age. Like you see that spark of when I first saw Boba Fett, for instance, I fell in love with the design, I loved the character, and 40 years later, I still love the character. So it's kind of cool to see some of these kids get into my stuff, and I'll get messages from some of the backers just saying, hey, can you give me some background on D&D? I really want to play. I like your characters. They make me want to play D&D. And that's the kind of stuff I live for in this stuff. So if you are into any of that or have any ambition to get into it, then definitely check out my books and hit me up anytime about it.
Nice. Well, we'll definitely be doing that. October 12th is whenever you're going to be going ahead and launching this campaign. It'll be a 30-day, correct?
Yes.
So a 30-day campaign. So everybody pay attention to that. It'll run through the spooky season and then finish out in the middle of next month. So, spooky season's here and everything too. This is a great book for that if you want to kind of look into it. Fulfillment won't happen until after spooky season, of course, but it still gives you something else to look into there and to share out to others this time of year with things going on. Hint, hint, you need to do this, yada, yada, yada. Everybody knows how that goes. But thank you very much for being here, Chris. I've had a great time having you on the show. And I definitely need to get you back. And it looks like we're going to have a separate show at some point talking about pop culture movies and games and stuff like that, and just run that thing as long as we possibly can, because I could talk to you for hours about this stuff.
Oh, I have a lot of, I would say, well-rounded opinions is what I like to call them, because I understand that my opinion is not always right. But I have a lot of knowledge in some of these areas, and I do try to get some background before I make my opinion.
Absolutely.
I'd love to get on and talk about some of this stuff. Just don't bring up Star Wars. That's all I ask. We can talk about the prequels. We can talk about the original movies. I will never talk about the sequels on a live show again. That one made me mad.
Yeah. We'll shy away from that. I assure you. There's too many.
There's an ongoing joke with me and Brad, who's in he's Caliber in my book. We've been best friends for 12 years, and every conversation we have always goes into Star Wars. And even to the point where his ex-wife and my wife would text each other, and they're like, are they really talking about Star Wars again? We just saw each other 5 minutes ago. So I'm a big Star Wars person, and that's like a 3-hour show on its own.
Well, we will shy away from that, I assure you. In fact, let me go ahead and give you my pledge on that one. May the force be with you.
Hey, I'm a Trek fan too. I can appreciate both. I love the fact that so when people ask me what I think the difference between Star Wars and Star Trek is at its core, Star Wars is science fiction. Okay, it's a very loose, and that's one of its biggest problems is that it's based loosely on science, whereas Roddenberry really went in with hard science on Star Trek, which is why it was able to be so successful for so long.
Yes,
and why I feel like it has a better overall, like throughout the years. I think Star Trek, even though it stumbles on a few different series, it was able to stay mostly consistent with its lore and its rules that it had set for itself. Whereas Star Wars, because it's so loose, there's room for imagination in there. And I think that's where it stumbles, is when you have too many imaginations going on at the same time and you don't have enough set rules, that you can't always get the outcome that you want. And so I will hand you that Star Trek is better with hard science than Star Wars. But that's where I'll leave it.
oh yeah, no, absolutely. But I mean, hey, talking about great world building through them, again, great world building and Crit, do not miss out on that. Find out what's going on over there. October 12th is the launch on that. If you want to know anything else, where can they find you if they have any questions or anything? Find you online, follow you on social media?
Yeah, easiest place is my website, homebrewedcomics.com. I have all the links. I even have the Kickstarter link right at the top. On Instagram, I'm at Homebrewed Comics, pretty simple. Twitter and Facebook, take the CS off the end and put an X, because there's a beer company that had mine apparently early on. But yeah, so it, I always direct people to the website just because it's a lot easier in the long run than trying to at Homebrewed Comics.
Yes.
I'm on Instagram more than anything else. I've got a TikTok, I've got a Twitter, I've got a Facebook, but I've found my niche on Instagram, and that's where I stick. But I'll post every once in a while elsewhere.
Cool. Well, again, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate having you on as my guest on this hell of a show. And like I said, looking forward to having you back again if you're interested on coming back as well.
Yeah, let me know. I'll schedule these things and get on here and talk about stuff all the time.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to go ahead and drop you backstage, finish out the show. And if you want to hang out, you're more than welcome to. And I'll be closing this thing out here in just a moment.
Cool.
All right. All right, very cool. We had Chris Sahloff on here talking about Crit and the world building that's on there, Dungeons and Dragons. We talked about pop culture. We talked about, we got onto Marvel. We talked very little bit about Star Wars. We didn't want to, jump all over that nerve too much on this one. And we promised we wouldn't bring that up, as far as a general conversation for future on there, which we're not doing. Now, I always have a closing statement about my my shows, and tonight's not going to be any different with that. It's always based on my guest and something that was said on there. For this one, I want to go ahead and use one word scenario like I always do, which would be friendship. Most everything that was discussed tonight was based around the friendship that he has and the camaraderie that he has with the guys. And it went as far as from a game and just having fun and goofing around and just relieving stress, whatever you want to call it at that time, to the point where it actually became a little bit bigger in the world of Crit and became, this comic series that's going on. So with that being said, it's always good to go ahead and position yourself with people who will build you up instead of taking you down. So always remember, as far as friendship is concerned, you always have a choice in the matter. You can pick who you want to choose as your friends and go ahead and keep with them. Whereas you can, decide not to hang out with some other people who may be more on the negative side. And we don't deal with negativity, so you know where mine stands on that. So until next time, we're going to go ahead and shut this one off for this time. Thank you very much for being here. Please, please, please like, subscribe, and share. And we're going to go ahead and shut this down. Don't miss that end credit scene. Keep it indie, y'all.
I'm all dressed up and naked. I see what's mine and take it. Oh, yeah, the crown. So close I can taste it. I see what's mine and take it. Oh, yeah. Two kings are ruling castles. Welcome to my world of fun. Liars settle into sockets. Flip the switch and watch them run. See what's mine and take it.
What? With a background like this, if you can't hum that along with me and go ahead and figure out what that music is, we can't be friends anymore.